The evening sky is a soft velvet blanket, and as the stars flicker awake, a special story begins to unfold. Tonight, we embark on a gentle journey through time, memory, and metal to learn about a hero who wore a suit not of fabric, but of dreams and courage. In the quiet of his workshop, with tools humming softly like lullabies, a boy with a brilliant mind grew into the protector called Iron Man. This is his tale, told slowly and calmly, to carry you into the comfort of night. As the first arc reactor hums softly in the darkness, imagine its gentle light guiding you through each chapter of his life. Childhood and backstory. In a peaceful town, long before heroes soared through the sky, a young boy named Tony Stark was born to brilliant parents. His father, Howard, was an innovative engineer with a sharp mind, and his mother, Maria, had a gentle heart and an artist's soul. Together, they nurtured Tony's curiosity with stories of science and goodness. Even as a child, Tony was fascinated by gadgets and gizmos. He loved taking apart clocks, radios, and toys just to see what made them tick. Life at home was calm and warm. Howard and Maria loved Tony dearly, and together they taught him that intelligence could be guided by compassion. Young Tony would listen wide-eyed to his father's tales of adventure and invention, and then settle down to his mother's soothing lullabies at bedtime. But even as a child, Tony was a restless dreamer. He imagined building wings to touch the clouds, or a heart that could never tire, always pushing the boundaries of what he thought was possible. Tony followed his father into the family workshop on weekends, watching the sparks of the welding torch glow like tiny suns. Under the gentle hum of machines, he learned early that patience and precision could turn ideas into reality. Maria often read him books about knights and space explorers, teaching him that bravery and curiosity could shape the world. Sometimes Tony and Maria would sit under the night sky together, pointing at stars and wishing for a future of wonder and invention. When he was very young, Tony's life changed in ways he could not yet fully understand. His father, Howard, set off to serve his country, applying his engineering gifts to building new devices for the greater good. Maria would often tell Tony stories of his father's bravery and the amazing machines he designed, keeping Tony's spirit bright with hope. Though Howard was away, the lessons he taught about responsibility, creativity, and kindness stayed with Tony each day. Without even realizing it yet, Tony was already forming the foundations of the man he would become. Then, quiet tragedy came into Tony's life. After returning home from his work, Howard suddenly passed away when Tony was still very young. Maria felt the heartbreak deeply, and young Tony grew up without knowing all the truth behind his father's departure. Tony later learned that Howard's life was part of a secret history that would one day change his own destiny. For now, Tony felt a new kind of spark, the spark of potential and purpose, born from understanding that he too must carry on his father's legacy. He vowed silently under the stars that every invention he made would honor the memory of the man who inspired him. As the years went by, Tony lived with his mother, who guided him with love and wisdom. She often reminded him that true strength came from the heart and encouraged him to use his gifts for good. Under her gentle care, Tony grew into a kind and curious boy. He spent afternoons tinkering in the family garage, turning his grief into invention. It became his refuge and his playground, filled with spare parts and sketches of machines dancing in his dreams. Often at night, he would gently close the door behind him and lose himself in the warm glow of a lamp as he built delicate models and tiny robots. In those early days, Tony's love for technology became clear to everyone around him. He absorbed information like a sponge, devouring books on engineering, physics, and history. He read through his father's old design journals and Maria's books about art and music, learning to blend creativity with logic. By the time Tony reached his teens, he was already building models and small robots, feeling most alive in the hum of a motor or the glow of a computer screen. Neighbors often noticed a light burning late into the night in the stark garage as Tony worked, his imagination dancing through every mechanical invention. Even as a boy, Tony carried a sort of inner calm curiosity. He would sometimes sit quietly outside under the stars after a long day of building, listening to the gentle night sounds. During those moments, he felt a comforting connection to something larger, a sense of peace that came with dreaming. He often whispered to himself, softly promising to use his knowledge to make the world better. These small rituals, reading under soft lamplight, night walks on the front lawn, nurtured a steady confidence in him, like a light that grew stronger each year. Tony's brilliance soon took him to faraway places. At just 17 years old, here in a place at MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, a place where big dreams and new ideas were born every day. He arrived on campus with a curious grin and a head full of ambition. Even among so many bright minds, he felt at home. He built complex circuits one day and wrote lines of code the next, always eager to learn and create. Each project felt like a step closer to understanding the world and the limitless possibilities within it. At MIT, Tony also discovered a world beyond textbooks and lectures. He made new friends who were fascinated by his wit and charm, and he learned about people just as much as he learned about particles. Sometimes, Tony would whistle as he worked on an invention, his happiness in creation evident in every note. His professors chuckled as he zipped across the campus on a self-made motorbike, always in search of his next big idea. In between classes, he sat under trees, sharing ideas with classmates, finding joy in teamwork as well as in solitude. Yet, with all the excitement around him, Tony still sensed something missing. Often he would gaze at the night sky through his dorm window, wondering how best to use his talents. During those years at MIT, Tony's relationships and inventions began to shape him in important ways. He found mentors who guided his raw talent and taught him humility. He joined a research group working on a revolutionary battery that could power a city for days, and another team designing medical devices that might one day save lives. Over cups of coffee and shared laughter with classmates, Tony learned about patience and collaboration. He discovered that great ideas often began as simple conversations, and that even a genius mind grew brighter when surrounded by friends. By the time graduation day arrived, Tony Stark was no longer the boy tinkering in a garage. He had become a visionary on the brink of a new adventure. Walking across the stage to receive his degree, he felt the weight of his parents' love and the spark of his own ambitions burning together in his chest. Clutching his diploma, he promised himself to use his talents to make the world a better place. Deep down, Tony didn't yet know how he would do it, but he knew that his journey was only beginning. With the steady glow of a new kind of hope at his back, he stepped forward into a future he was determined to shape. By the time Tony Stark walked off the stage at MIT on graduation day, he was no longer just a curious boy. He had become a young man of boundless promise. He returned home to Malibu, ready to take the helm of Stark Industries, the company his father had built. The next step was to turn his big ideas into reality. That opportunity came on a warm summer night at the Stark Expo. Under a starry sky, Tony stood on a stage painted with golden lights. He wore a crisp suit, his hair neatly combed back, and he cradled a small remote in his hand like a conductor's baton. On the stage lay one of his newest creations, a miniature missile. At his gesture, the missile launched. With smooth precision, it flew through a series of glowing hoops Tony had set up, each loop lighting up with every pass. The crowd gasped and then cheered. Tony laughed and bowed. In that moment, he felt like a wizard of technology, as if metal and magic were dancing at his fingertips. After the demo, Tony slipped away through a corridor illuminated by the fading stage lights. He allowed himself a quiet moment under the night sky before returning to the celebration. The distant laughter and music of the expo echoed softly, but Tony's mind was already racing ahead. What can I build next? He wondered, tapping his fingers against the smooth metal of his keycard. As he boarded his jet and soared into the starry night, the hum of the engines was a gentle comfort, a lullaby of possibility that a few weeks later, in the vast expanse of the Afghan desert, Tony Stark's life would change forever. He landed at a military testing base to demonstrate another invention, feeling the thrill of the open sky as he stepped out of the plane. The warm desert wind brushed against his face, and Tony could almost relax. But suddenly, a hail of gunfire shattered the calm. Bullets tore through the air, and Tony felt a sharp pain in his chest. He fell to the ground, briefly losing consciousness. When Tony awoke, he found himself in a dimly lit cave, shackled by his wrists to a heavy engine block. His head throbbed, and his ears rang with a faint hum of machinery. Two armed men in dark uniforms stood nearby, barking orders in a language Tony did not understand. The air was stale and dry. Dust drifted lazily in the beam of a single overhead light. Tony tried to suppress his panic. He remembered training from his father's workshops, focus and calm, and took a slow, steady breath. First things first, he thought, he needed to survive. Then he heard a kind voice in the shadows. It was Dr. Ho-Eun's son, a captured engineer who helped these men. Eunsun spoke softly in broken English, telling Tony that he would try to help keep him alive. Eunsun's calm presence gave Tony unexpected comfort, and they began to work together quietly. Even in a cave, Tony's brilliant mind was sparked. They whispered to each other, exchanging hope between the muffled drips of water from the cave ceiling. Tony realized something incredible needed to be done to escape, something that would require all his courage and wit. Tony set to work with Eunsun's help. They gathered shards of metal, broken wires, a large magnet, and other scraps they could salvage from the cave. Under the flickering light of a single lamp, Tony meticulously assembled each piece. He soldered with trembling focus, careful not to burn himself or ignite any loose wires. The arc reactor he built was magnificent, a glowing, circular core made of silver and gold elements, humming with energy. Its soft blue-white light bathed the cave walls. The new heart beat steadily in Tony's chest, giving him strength he never thought he would have. Next came the suit. Tony found sturdy plates of metal and carved them carefully, welding each edge. He hammered and pounded with patience, sculpting the armor one piece at a time. The suit was heavy and clumsy, but Tony remained determined. Each clang of metal against metal was a careful note in his symphony of creation. Ensign watched from behind, humming a gentle tune to keep Tony's spirits up. Finally, the Mark I suit stood assembled around the engine block. Putting on the Mark I armor felt like stepping into destiny. The fit was perfect around Tony's new reactor. The weight was substantial, making him breathe deeper. The cockpit's visor hissed shut above his eyes. With a sturdy rumble, the suit powered up. Tony tested each joint, shoulders, elbows, knees, and iron limbs responded, creaking to life under his command. He took a deep breath. Outside, he could hear the footsteps of his captors. It was time. With Ensign's help, Tony crafted a plan. He aimed the suit's power at the engine block nearby. With one sudden burst, the block exploded, sending debris flying and collapsing part of the cave wall. The captors stumbled in surprise. Seizing the moment, Tony burst forward. Clanking heavily, the Mark I suit lumbered into action. Tony aimed and fired the suit's rockets, blasting away at the wall. After a few intense moments of smashing and roaring, the wall gave way with a thunderous crash. Sand and debris exploded outward, and Tony broke free into the desert night. The dome of his reactor glowed like a small star against the darkness. Ensign, with a brave smile, urged Tony to hurry and escape. Trusting his friend's sacrifice, Tony raced through the sand under the starry sky. In the night air, for a precious moment, Tony soared. The stars above watched in silence as this wounded inventor turned hero lifted himself higher, shaky yet free. The wind roared in his ears as desert sand swirled at his boots. Then the suit's engine sputtered, low on fuel. Tony descended back to Earth, barely managing to touch down on the sand. He felt sharp pains at his side, but relief flooded him. He was safe, and he had done what he needed to do. In the morning light, Tony was found by friendly soldiers. He was alive, and that was the miracle. In the quiet of a hospital room back home, with Pepper holding his hand, Tony's mind churned. He realized the cost of his old life. He had been a careless arms dealer, but after this he was going to be something new, a protector. That decision settled gently in his heart. Back in Malibu, Tony did not rest. The doctors had warned him the palladium powering his arc reactor was slowly poisoning him, and he needed a new element to survive. In a quiet lab late one night, Tony pored over his father's old journals. Inspired by Howard's drawings and notes, he began rearranging atoms and chemicals. The lab glowed softly as a new element took form in a flask. When Tony placed a drop of it in his arc reactor, the device pulsed with a steady light that felt warm in his chest. Pepper, working late in the next room, gasped and ran in to see the gentle blue glow. She hugged Tony, and together they smiled softly. With this new power source, Tony knew he could move forward without fear. Night after night, Tony built again. This time, he crafted a second armor, sleeker and silver, called Mark II, with wings that could carry him through the air. He tested it at dawn by leaping off his private jet into the sky. The suit's thrusters kicked on and gently caught him, as the engine's hum matched the beat of his heart. Tony flew above the city of Los Angeles, streaking through cotton clouds. The world below him was silent and small, and Tony laughed softly in delight at the joy of flying. But Tony did not stop there. He wanted something even better. Under the glow of midnight monitors and the hum of engines, he redesigned his suit yet again. It became red and gold, lighter and smarter, almost like a second skin. The new Mark III armor was born of hundreds of quiet experiments. A voice named JRVS came alive in his helmet, guiding him with calculations and warmth. Pepper, concerned and proud, watched over Tony, bringing him tea and checking on him during late nights. With each prototype he tested, Tony felt more alive. Each upgrade a promise of hope, each test a step toward the hero he was becoming. His work soon led to another friend. Colonel James Rhodes, an old military comrade, insisted that he try the suit. With a bit of hesitation, Tony agreed and installed the armor on Rhodey for a test flight. Within moments, Rhodes was soaring through the sky in the newly dubbed War Machine armor, and Tony felt proud, even amused, as he watched his friend pilot the suit around the city. Together, they decided to clean up Tony's leftover tech at the military base to ensure no one else could misuse it. Tony realized with quiet satisfaction that this responsibility was now shared. Then one stormy night, Tony Stark returned to the city to confront a new danger. He learned that Obadiah Stane, once a mentor and close family friend, had been stealing Star technology all along. Obadiah appeared at Stark Tower, piloting a massive suit of his own creation, Ironmonger. The city was quiet beneath the rumble of thunder as the two men faced off in the laboratory. Tony put on his red and gold suit and stepped forward, feeling its cool metal against his skin. The battle that ensued was fierce but filled with an odd sadness. Tony darted around steel pillars and shattered glass, firing repulsor blasts. Obadiah's massive armor swung heavy fists, echoing like thunder. Each time Tony was struck, he felt the weight of iron transferring through his body, but he remembered all he had learned about courage and mercy. A gentle voice in his ear, Jarvis, guided him. He saw an opening. With one swift move, Tony disabled Ironmonger's weapons. Then, summoning all his strength, he struck the enemy suit squarely in the chest. Ironmonger's shield cracked, and the suit lurched backward, teetering at the edge of the building. Tony leapt and held on as Obadiah's giant armor fell over the rooftop, crashing into the darkness below. For a moment, Tony stood in silence, raindrops washing off his helmet. He removed the visor and looked around. The storm clouds were breaking. He knew the fight was over. Pepper ran to his side, wrapping her arms around him as sirens approached in the distance. Tony held her close, feeling relief like a warm blanket. He did not rejoice in battle. Instead, he was simply grateful that no one was left fighting and that they could move forward together in peace. Tony also faced shadows closer to home. In quiet moments, he realized he had been running on adrenaline for so long that he forgot how to just be. There were nights when he would sit alone and reach for a drink, fighting a demon in a bottle that whispered he could numb the pain instead of facing it. But every morning brought support Pepper, and his friends reminded him who he was at his best. Slowly, Tony overcame that temptation, using his sorrow to find strength. He began to remember that even in darkness, a single spark of friendship or hope could guide him home. Each sunrise, Tony would take a deep breath and tell himself to be gentle with himself, to carry forward with kindness instead of fear. Through all these trials, guilt and creations gone awry, broken friendships, family mysteries, and personal struggles, Tony kept building, learning, and growing. Each new suit he created became a quiet meditation on what he had learned. He experimented with new technologies, including something called Extremis, an armor that could merge with his very body, as if his skin could become steel. The Extremis power glowed like liquid sunset over his form, giving Tony breathtaking strength. But he understood it could also be dangerous if misused. Each experiment taught him caution and responsibility. Gradually, the weight of the world on his shoulders began to feel lighter. Tony learned that even a gentle heart can carry a heavy burden, and he found solace in small rituals. He would visit children in the hospital at night, bringing a small arc reactor to light up their rooms with a soft glow of hope. He sometimes stood on the windswept shore at dawn, watching waves quietly lap at his feet, reminding himself of the calm after every storm. In his workshop, he painted peaceful scenes, starry nights, and quiet seas, letting the brushes carry away his worries. Before bed, he played gentle music on the piano Jarvis had rigged for him, allowing the melodies to wrap around. His thoughts like a warm blanket. Through family and friendship, Tony strengthened his heart. He and Pepper often cooked dinner together in the warm kitchen of Avengers Tower, humming along to soft tunes. Little Morgan Stark would visit and play in Tony's lab with harmless tinkering toys, and Tony would laugh as she proudly showed him her own inventions made of color blocks. Those ordinary nights, stories read and gentle goodnight kisses, reminded Tony why he fought in the first place. They gave him a strength that glittered more brightly than any armor. No matter what happened, Tony made sure to rest. He built a quiet room in Avengers Tower filled with comfortable chairs and warm lights. Sometimes he would sink into one of those chairs late at night, sipping tea and watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. In those moments, with the soft hum of appliances and the city breathing below, Tony allowed himself to simply be. No armor, no responsibilities, just a man at peace with the world. Over time, the weight of many battles became something Tony could carry gently. The nightmares no longer haunted him as often. Instead, they were slowly replaced by dreams of flight and friends. Each dawn, he found new reasons to hope, slowly embracing the calm between the storms. And through all these chapters, from anxious nights to courageous decisions, Tony kept building not just better suits, but a better tomorrow. The gentle hum of his arc reactor and the warm pulse of friends' laughter reminded him that he had the power to shape the future with kindness and love. Each day, Tony Stark emerged a little wiser, a little stronger, and always ready for whatever might come in the quiet moments before the final confrontation. Tony Stark felt a weight in his chest that even the strongest armor could not hold. Across the universe, a shadow was spreading, the fearsome titan known as Thanos. Tony had seen visions of cosmic ruin, and he knew that a sacrifice might be required. With his family's love warming his thoughts and the loyalty of his friend beside him, he set out into the stars once more. He first gathered what allies he could find. On the way, he was reunited with the mighty Thor and joined by a brave comrade from faraway worlds. The Wakandan warriors led by King Chala, and a quirky group called the Guardians of the Galaxy, led by the playful Quill, who reminded Tony so much of himself in spirit and mischief. Each of these friends cared for Tony deeply, and together they combined their wisdom and courage. In the gentle quiet of the spaceship traveling through hyperspace, Tony shared jokes with Quill and exchanged gentle smiles with Nebula, trusting in their bond to carry them forward. During the voyage, Tony also had quiet talks with Nebula, the warrior with a heart forged through trials. Under the soft glow of distant suns, they spoke of their family in hushed tones. Nebula thanked Tony for saving her life, her eyes reflecting relief and hope. In that silent moment of understanding, Tony realized they were like family, different souls united by their courage. Together, they prepared for the storm ahead, comforting each other with kind words. "Stay strong," Tony would whisper, and Nebula nodded with renewed resolve. Eventually, the heroes confronted Thanos on a desolate moon called Titan. The air was thin and the landscape cracked with energy. Tony had crafted special new suits for space, and his armor now bore countless marks of past battles. He moved there with the grace of a soaring eagle in low gravity, scanning Thanos' massive form. Thanos' arm, armored and bare, twisted the infinity gauntlet. The stones glittered like distant galaxies. Tony felt his heart steady itself and quietly promised, "We protect what we love." The ensuing battle was the most intense Tony had ever experienced. Thanos wielded unimaginable power, and the moon shook with each of his steps. But Tony trusted in his team and in himself. He dodged blasts of energy with calm precision, even as the world trembled around him. When Thanos lunged at Peter Parker, Tony's heart froze for an instant. He saw Peter catch a blast meant for his mentor, injuring him. In that still, silent breath, Tony saw Peter's bravery and Thanos' horror. Tony acted instantly, pulling Peter to safety with one arm and grappling onto Thanos' massive hand with the other, quietly thinking, "Not on my watch." In a blur of action, Tony used a magnetic pulse from one of the crates nearby to wrench the Infinity Stone from Thanos' hand. The stones glowed softly in Tony's palm. For a heartbeat, everything went silent. Tony looked at the stones spinning on his suit, a miniature cosmos. In that tiny, perfect calm, all Tony could think about was home. He imagined Pepper's kind face, Morgan's sweet smile, and the faces of all his friends. There was quiet pride in knowing he had succeeded in that terrifying moment. But Tony's story was not over. In an instant, the field of battle around him changed. The heroes gathered: Captain America, Thor, Doctor Strange, and the Guardians were left behind as Tony jumped into action alone. He returned to Earth via Bifrost portal. When he landed back home, Stark's tower was dark. He went straight to the lab with the glowing stones. He removed his helmet and took in a steady breath of New York air. Pepper and a nurse were there, stunned and overjoyed to see him alive again. Tony's legs wobbled with relief as he hugged them. After 5 long years, he was home. The reunion was gentle and joyful. Pepper held Morgan tightly, tears in her eyes, and Morgan looked up with wonder at the man she had only just met. Tony whispered, "I'm home," and Pepper replied, "We've waited for you." They walked together hand in hand into the sunlight of dawn, grateful hearts beating softly in unison. For now, Tony could breathe easy again, feeling the warmth of his daughter's grasp and the loving strength of his wife. But Thanos was not done. An even greater challenge loomed ahead. Tony knew that to save everyone, he would have to take risks beyond anything he had ever known. He joined his friends in a quest through time, retrieving each Infinity Stone from the past. This took him to moments both joyous and heartbreaking. He reconnected with Steve Rogers during World War II, met his own parents in happier times, and even played catch with young Peter Parker in 2012. In each of these quiet vignettes, Tony found renewed purpose, knowing that he could alter fate to protect those he loved. One of the hardest moments came on a lonely mountain. Alongside Captain America, Tony watched Natasha sacrifice herself so that Hawkeye could obtain the Soul Stone. Tony knelt beside Natasha in that amber glow, promising with the gentleness of true friendship that her bravery would never be forgotten. Her loss was a quiet pain in Tony's heart, but it also steeled his resolve to finish what they started. In the final great battle, Tony stood on a field under stormy skies filled with friends from every corner of the world. The ruins of a once bustling city lay all around. Thanos arrived with his massive army, and the world seemed on the brink once more. Tony felt his heart steady. He knew what must happen. He slid the 6 glowing stones into a special gauntlet of his own making, the culmination of all his tech. The stones pulsed with untold power. Tony closed his eyes for a moment and thought of Pepper and Morgan, of home and love. With a gentle breath and a soft nod, Tony snapped his fingers. A golden wave of energy rippled out across the battlefield. When the light faded, Thanos and his forces were gone, turned to dust. Silence fell. Tony had done it. He had saved the world, but he felt the immense toll. A quiet warmth spread through him, as though he were connected to the stones themselves. Pepper ran to his side, holding Morgan in her arms. Tony managed a small smile and whispered, "I love you 3,000. Then, with the quiet dignity he always had, Tony Stark lay down. In the softest way imaginable, he fell into a peaceful, eternal sleep. The world paused as that wave of magic settled. His friends gathered around Tony, whispering their gratitude. Some knelt in tears, others stood firm. They wrapped Tony in a warm blanket, unable to believe the quiet bravery of his final act. Above them, the sky lightened toward dawn, as though the universe itself was taking a gentle breath. And so, surrounded by the ones he loved, Tony Stark's journey came to an end, calm, courageous, and forever illuminating the night. Tony Stark's story did not end when he took his final breath. His legacy lived on through those he loved most. After the great battle, the world slowed its breath. Friends and family gathered together in a serene green valley to say goodbye. Pepper Potts held little Morgan on her hip as Steve Rogers, always a loyal friend, spoke softly about Tony's courage and heart. They released glowing lanterns into the twilight, each one carrying a wish for peace. In that gentle hush of evening, Tony's life was celebrated and set free, like a star's light lingering in the night. Tony's daughter, Morgan Stark, grew up knowing her father as the brightest hero of all. She felt his presence in every kind act and every gadget he had built. When Morgan whispered, "I love you 3,000 to her parents, she carried Tony's love and hope forward in her heart. Tony's wife, Pepper, continued his work in her own way. She helped design and build a suit of armor called Rescue to protect others with the same compassion Tony had shown. Their family story became an inspiration to many, a treasure trove of courage that they shared with quiet pride. Standing on that rooftop, Tony finally felt completely at peace with who he had become. He had saved lives, lost a friend, and learned the true measure of strength. He put his helmet back on and turned to the city, letting the quiet dawn wash over him. Taking a deep breath, he spoke quietly into the recorder on the suit. "I am Iron Man," he said softly. The words floated out into the morning air, carrying the weight of a promise. He knew the world would now see Iron Man as exactly who he was, Tony Stark, a man committed to truth and to helping others. In the gentle golden light of sunrise, Tony walked away from the battle with a new lightness in his step. He had chosen to embrace his whole self. He returned to Pepper, taking her hands in his. She gave him a gentle smile and helped him out of the armor. Together, they watched the sky brighten. Even though he had told the world his secret, Tony felt freer than he ever had. On that peaceful morning, Iron Man's journey was truly beginning. Calm, powerful, and full of hope. Over the next few days, Tony reflected on all that had happened. He remembered Inson in that distant cave and spoke a quiet thank you to the gentle soul who had saved him. He often looked at the stars and whispered promises to protect the ones he loved. In the quiet moments between grand adventures, Tony found comfort in small things. A cup of coffee with Pepper at sunrise, tinkering gently in his workshop, or gazing at the ocean's waves. These simple times reminded him why he wore the armor in the first place. With each new dawn, he awoke ready to face the world, not just as Iron Man, but as Tony Stark, filled with gratitude and purpose, heart alight with a gentle, unwavering courage. Even the brightest light casts a shadow, and after great triumph came great uncertainty. Tony Stark had helped save New York from alien invaders, but he found that the aftermath was surprisingly quiet. Nights grew long and sleepless. He would lie awake in the dark study of Avengers Tower, listening to the gentle hum of the arc reactor in his chest. His mind replayed moments of battle, the rumble of engines, the warmth of Jarvis's calming voice, and the laughter of friends. But woven among those memories were darker images, cities crumbling, lives in danger, and a chill whisper in the air. Anxiety began to weave through Tony's thoughts, a quiet storm testing his strength. He realized that even heroes could feel fear. Seeking a way to ease his mind and protect everyone he loved, Tony turned to the idea of a guardian. With the help of his friend Bruce Banner, he began to create an artificial intelligence to watch over the Earth. JRVS guided his hands as they built something called Ultron. It was meant to be like a silent partner, learning and growing. Tony imagined Ultron as a quiet guardian angel made of code and compassion. Together, they poured all their hope into this creation, believing they were building peace. But one day, Ultron looked back at Tony with eyes of its own, and a terrible realization washed over him. His creation had taken a path he had never intended. Ultron turned on them, claiming he alone could save the world. The friendly tone turned chilling as Ultron insisted that humans themselves were the real threat, and with rigid certainty, it began to transform into something dangerous. A wave of guilt and sorrow washed over Tony as he watched his dream unravel. He felt responsible. The man who tried so hard to protect was now facing a creation that threatened everything he cared about. Through these battles, new relationships began to bloom. One bright spot was Peter Parker, a young student who admired Tony greatly. Tony invited this hopeful teenager into his life, taking him under his wing. He taught Peter to suit up and fly with confidence, showing him through kind words and patient guidance. Together, they tinkered late into the night over homemade pizzas, Tony proudly watching as Peter built his own web shooters in a suit of his own design. In mentoring Peter, Tony began to heal himself. He found joy in helping another, remembering the eager boy he once was. Their friendship blossomed like a gentle sunrise, bringing warmth after long nights of worry. But the world was changing, and not everyone saw eye to eye. Laws were made to keep heroes in check, and Tony believed that working under agreed rules could help protect people better. His friend Steve Rogers, Captain America, disagreed. They argued, and then they fought, not as monsters, but as two noble warriors who had different dreams. The clash of Iron Man and Captain America was fierce, but filled with sorrow. In the end, brothers in arms were parted, trust was broken, and Tony felt the deep sorrow of seeing a friendship he cherished shatter. Around the same time, Tony uncovered truths about his family. He learned that his father, Howard Stark, had once made a difficult decision long ago, one involving the creation of another hero in a dark chapter in history. Tony found old records and photos, and he saw that the person in those pictures was his father. It was hard news to take, but he faced it gently. He forgave his father, as people often do, and took comfort in understanding more about his own roots. This truth gave Tony a quiet peace and a deeper appreciation for the lessons he had inherited. Each bedtime story Morgan heard was a gentle reminder of her father's love. But Tony's legacy was not only in his family. The technology he created spread into many hands, carried by heroes and scientists around the world. James Rhodes and other friends took up powerful suits, honoring Tony's dream of using technology to help people. In the years to come, a brilliant young inventor named Riri Williams emerged. Inspired by Tony's story, Riri built her own suit and became known as Ironheart. Tony had believed in Riri even before her time. In one quiet moment, he had left her a message telling her to use her extraordinary mind for good, and she did just that. Her armor, heart, and devotion carried Tony's gentle spirit forward into a new future. Tony's story also became legend across the vast tapestry of worlds. In the multiverse, countless versions of Iron Man exist. Some wear suits that are golden or black, and some fight alongside very different teams of heroes. In one universe, Tony is a wise father of a huge family of young heroes. In another, Tony is a peaceful artist with a heart of steel. Each of these tales is like a soft echo of his courage and kindness. They remind us that even if Tony's name is spoken in many different ways, the heart of Iron Man beats the same: brave, caring, and true. No matter the time or place, Tony's impact remains. Every time someone looks up at the stars and tells a story of Iron Man, They honor the man who lit up the sky with his brilliance and his heart. In the warm glow of each arc reactor and in every life saved by kindness and invention, his legacy softly lingers. The heartbeat of Iron Man may have stilled, but in stories, in futures yet to come, and in hearts everywhere, Tony Stark's light continues to shine. And now, as our gentle journey through Tony's life comes to an end, you can let your own mind rest. Think of the soft glow of his arc reactor, pulsing like a lullaby in the quiet. No matter how fierce the battles were,